to Down Your Unders. Down Your Unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all the lovely listeners out there in this big wide world of Warhammer. My name is Adam Camilleri, and welcome to episode 193 of Art of War Down Under. And we are concluding our review of this super duper Ork Codex. I am joined by illustrious green-skinned man himself, reigning from all over the world, currently residing in the UK. Brian Seipp, how you doing, brother? I did pronounce that surname correctly. Yeah,
you crushed it, man. I'm doing great, man. I'm in a world where orcs are great, and that is important.
I remember, I think we'd met before, but the first time I actually had a decent chat with you, you were on the stream table at LVO, I think 2022?
Yeah.
You were playing Orks. Mm-hmm. And you just crushed some poor lad's skull, who was also a lovely gentleman.
Jeff, poor Jeff. He played well, but...
I remember you got him out of there in about 90 minutes, and I was like, well, happy to put that one on stream. I get a longer lunch break. But you are here to help us review the last two detachments and then talk about your best and brightest from the data sheets and units that stand out to you. And then over on part two, guys, as always, over on the Patreon at Art of War Down Under, we will be answering some listener questions and talking about the detachment tier list from Brian, why he stands by some of his very interesting choices, because he still highly rates the index detachment. I'm really keen to unpack that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what could be or should be good into Orks going into the brand new meta, and of course, taking into account the data slate. And of course, the data slate dropped in a freaking Codex review, double for me. So we're actually unfortunately going to have to wait till next week for my full review of that, because I ain't stopping this green war train to do any of that nonsense. But Brian, is anything you'd like to plug? Anyone you'd like to shout out before we get underway?
Just for those of you who really aren't as into kind of teams 40K, just a lot of the big teams in the scene, U.S., Poland, England, they're all starting to make their selections for their top 8 kind of starting players. I was lucky enough to be picked for Team USA this year.
Yeah, boy.
And it's just really cool. It's a good opportunity. If you look at it, you're going to see a lot of names and so I encourage you to learn more about WTC and get into it, man. It's one of the best things in 40K right now.
It is one of my. It is my most favorite event of every year. I intend to go to every WTC streaming, not streaming, playing, not playing, as long as I'm financially able to. And I won't miss that event for the world. It's such a fun time. If all you can do is just buy a ticket to the War Master, go play in the singles, get your head crushed in by some of the best players in the world, and then kick back and walk around and just watch the teams, I highly encourage you to, as long as it's financially responsible for you to do so. But jumping into this review, we're going to be kicking off at page 84. We're going to be talking about Dread Mob, then we're going to be reviewing the Bully Boyz, and these are the last two. And of course, we're out of sync because Lucas Troller, the mad lad, put his thumb on the back of my head and said, "Adam, I'm reviewing Green Tide," and so we're a little bit out of order, so I do apologize. But Dread Mob, the detachment rule is try that button. Now, this takes a little bit to unpack, but each time a mech, orc, walker, or Grot vehicle unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight, roll a d6. To the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models in the unit have the corresponding ability below. 1 or 2 is sustained hits, 3 or 4 is lethal hits, 5 or 6 is a critical wound, improve the AP characteristic of that attack by 2. So 6 is a wound plus 2 AP. Alternatively, when such a unit is selected to shoot or fight, you can select one of the abilities above instead of rolling the d6. If you do until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models in the unit have the hazardous ability as well. If you already have the hazardous ability, you proc hazards on a 1 or 2. And then lastly, Gretchen become battle line in this detachment. What do you make of this Dread Mob try that button? There is a lot to unpack and a lot to quantify, but is it good?
First off, I think the fluff is just off the charts, man.
Absolutely.
They really captured it, and they captured it in a way which I think is a really cool and meaningful role. I mean, you're just buffing any one of your units to give it the buff you need if you're willing to take that kind of the risk of the hazardous to get the one you need at any given time. And all 3 of those abilities are impactful and good. You can give yourself the old dock roll with 6s. Yeah. You can get the explosions. You can get the lethals if you have the low strength, trying to get on something that's high toughness. Or if somebody's, got the AOC cover combo, you can just negate that with some crit hits. So that's awesome. I think it's a really cool ability. And then I think actually sneakily at the end, you mentioned Gretchen becoming battle line. I think that's enormous because Gretchen earned C2. and Gretchen are awesome. So,
100% agree. There's been some interesting packages coming out with, is it Zogrod? The named Rundherd at 20 Gretchen may become a mainstay unit in many armies, and we'll unpack that one again as we go in. Maybe that'll be one of the ones that I pull out for the data sets that I like to look of. But jumping into the enhancements, the first of which is Smoky Gubbins. It's mech model only, and I think all of these are mech model only. Yes, they are. Models in the Bearers unit have the stealth ability. Now, this seems like the least good because you can only make things so durable. But the idea, of course, you can join units to mech guns now, so you can make them a little more durable. But I think there's better things because ostensibly this detachment's all about just blowing people up. Yeah.
This is okay. The others are just going to be better. And stealth, generally speaking, it's good, but it's effectively like a 17% reduction on somebody's effectiveness to shoot you right, kind of -1 to hit, if you will. So that's good, and I'd spend points on it if I had points to spend, and I wouldn't be upset about it, but it wouldn't be one of the ones I take if I was trying to fit into a list.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it's a huge buff in the mirror match, but how much you want to take for the mirror match is entirely up to you. It will run you, how much Smoky Gubbins, it'll run you 15 points as per the back of this codex, which of course take with a grain of salt. What is the next enhancement, mate?
The super glowy thing.
Bless their cotton socks. They went straight to it.
Yeah, so it goes to a mech. In your command phase, select one enemy unit within 18 inches, invisible to the bear. You chuck a d6 on a 1 to 2. The enemy takes battle shock. 3 to 4, they take d3 mortal wounds. And on a 5 to 6, they'll start your next command phase. Whenever they make an attack, it's -1 from that hit roll. And for this one, I think all three of these abilities are pretty cool. The thing I don't like about it is that it happens in your command phase, which means your opponent has full agency to stop it because it's visible and within 18. And you don't get to pick what the ability is. So all three of these abilities are cool, and all three of these abilities are good. And I think that if it was only one of these abilities, you would probably have situations where you'd consider it. But the fact that it's a conditional 18 inches and visible and in the command phase, and then you don't even necessarily get the one of the three that you need for the given situation, I'm a little cold on it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. Next one is Press It Faster. Each time the bearer's unit is selected to shoot when rolling to determine which ability the weapon gains from the try that button detachment rule, roll one additional d6 until the end of the phase. Ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit gain both button effects generated by those rolls. If duplicate button effects are rolled, it has no additional effect. This one opens a couple of can of worms. How does that interact with the chosen option? Do you have to roll? And I believe the answer is yes, you have to roll. You don't get the chance to choose one, roll the other, or choose both, yeah?
Yeah, I think it only takes effect when you're rolling to determine the ability. So you always do random.
Exactly right. Just to clear it up for people, the points for this one, which is the Press It Faster, is 35. And the previous one, the Super Glowy thing, was 20 points. And then the last one is going to be 10 points. And I think it is clearly the best one. But take it away, mate.
The Get Finder Goggles. Ranged weapons equipped by models in the Spares unit have ignore cover. That is amazing. That's
exactly right.
+1 AP, right? I mean,
yeah. On any relevant unit that you are shooting, it is +1 AP because if your opponent is good and you're shooting at a unit that they care about, chances are they're in cover. And that's what we've learned from 10th edition. The fact that it is the cheapest one is mind-boggling to me. I would have paid 35 for that. Instead, it's 10.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Press It Faster one's actually kind of good.
It is, yeah.
I think but not at 35. I think that's a bit too expensive. But the goggles are so good.
Yeah. Windmill Slam, auto include. I still think you take Press It Faster, but you have to have the right unit. I mean, right now, the unit people are talking about with that is a mech with some looters and then just jacking them up to the 9s with the full rerolls to hit on units against units on objectives. And then you're likely to have sustained lethal or, AP3 on 6s, which is pretty spicy. But as far as I can tell, those last two are the two you really want to consider. The other two, if you've got the right amount of points left, maybe. All right. First of the stratagems, Clank and Claws, 1 CP. It is a battle tactic. It happens in the fight phase. It's an Ork Walker unit from your army. It has not been selected to fight. Each time you use this stratagem, you can choose to push it. And this is a theme that you will find that underlines most of the stratagems in this. At the end of the phase, add 2 to the strength characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in your unit. If you choose to push it to the end of the phase, add 1 to the damage characteristic of this as well. And they have hazardous. How do you feel about this strat, and how do you feel about the mechanic to, I guess, push it harder?
I think the strat is extremely good. You'll notice when we get to some of the cool data sheets for this army that a lot of them have sweep attacks, and sweep attacks are strong, but sweep attacks damage 1 are fine. Sweep attacks damage 2 are quite good. Sweep attacks damage 3 are bananas. So that's what we're looking at here, is pumping things up to damage 2 or damage 3, and also getting additional strength. I mean, it's just really solid. And then as far as just the way they're doing this, I think this is really, really cool.
I think it's exceptional.
You have a strat that doesn't affect, and then if you lean into the army rule a bit more, you get an extra, even better effect like that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. Tell us about the next one.
So super fueled boiler. So this is a search deploy 1 CP in your movement phase. Just after an Ork Walker unit from your army has been selected to advance, you pick that unit, and until the end of the turn, you can reroll the advance rolls made with that unit, and ranged weapons equipped by it have assault. I think that's awesome. That lets you turn a lot of corners. So I think one of the biggest problems with this army is the fact that some of the really cool things move relatively slowly because they're kind of these walkers, so 6 to 8 inches. But giving the ability to advance and shoot and also re-roll that advance roll, awesome.
Yeah, totally agree. And in addition to that, just about everything in this army has a huge footprint. Even a killer can is on a big base. It's on a 60, isn't it, I believe?
Oh, 60, yeah.
Yeah. So everything in this army is on a large base, has all the same downsides as a Thunderwolf cavalry unit, but many more of the upsides as well. The next one is bigger shells for bigger gits, and I freaking love the names. 1 CP, it is a battle tactic, which, I mean, I'm going to throw it out right now. Is it just a downside for orcs to have battle tactic stratagems? Because I haven't yet to see anything that makes their stratagems free or cheaper. Does it just mean that these are just things that are just going to get taxed into the Calidus assassins and such?
Yeah, I think it's just downside. I think that's becoming less of a downside these days because you're seeing those effects less often. But I do think it's just a downside, though.
Fair. Happens in your shooting phase. It's a mech, orc walker, or grot vehicle, so everything affected by this army rule from your army that has not been selected to shoot. Until each time you use this stratagem, you can choose to push it, of course. Until the end of the phase, each time a model your unit makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, add 1 to the wound roll for 1 CP. Already one of the slapdown best strats in the game. If you choose to push it, add 1 to the damage characteristic, and until the end of the phase, you'll have hazardous as well. 1 CP plus 1 to wound plus 1 damage against monster or vehicle. That is one of the best CPs in the game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, plus 1 wound is always incredibly strong when it's around, and then also getting damage. And it works on just about everything that you want to use it for. The one part of the strat, which I don't think makes tons of sense, so I'm sure there's a reason I'm just not realizing, is why it gives the ranged weapons hazardous, because you're already pushing your weapons, which is giving them hazardous. So I'm not sure what's up with that. There's a bit of a double dip there, so I'm sure there's some case that I'm missing. But
exactly right. All right, tell us about the next one.
The next one is Daka. So this happens in the shooting phase. An Ork Walker or Grot vehicle unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot just yet. Each time you use the strat, you can choose to push it, just like all the other strats, until the end of the phase. Each time model unit makes an attack, re-roll hit rolls of 1, and if instead you're pushing it, you get to re-roll all hit rolls until the end of the phase. Your weapons again gain hazardous.
Fantastic. 1 CP, full rerolls to hit. Another absolute banger of a strat. And as we know, a lot of the time, this detachment may be the exception to the rule. A lot of the time, a lot of orc units are one use, and of course, mega knobs will buck that trend also. But a lot of the time, you throw out your knob unit, you smash something to absolute bits, 2 or 3 things if you can, tap something else, they fall back, and then you get blown up. The fact that this is 1 CP to just go to the absolute freaking stratosphere, and a lot of the time that means that if you roll hazardous, well, whatever, you're going to die next turn anyway. But like I said, if that's a big unit of killer cans, or it's a Morkanaut or something like that, maybe you weren't going to die. So hazardous was a bit of a tax.
Yeah, for sure.
1 CP's next up for conniving runts. So we got a Gretchen stratagem here. This is a happens in your movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fall back move. The Gretchen unit from your army is within 9 of the enemy unit and not within engagement range. Roll a d6. On a 4+, the enemy unit suffers d3+1 mortal wounds, and then you can make a normal move. So you can make a normal move all the time for 1 CP. You just move when they come within 9, so it's just a reactive move. But you also do d3+1 mortal wounds opportunistically. I think this is one of the best reactive moves in the game.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's a full reactive move, which already puts it in best of class, and then you also have half the time you're going to have a mortal wound effect as well. Yeah, it's awesome.
D3+1 though, lol. Like yeah, I don't know why I have the +1 on it. It just makes it feel like it's such a nice cherry on top.
It's just it's because it's Grot, man. You got to have that upside.
All right, tell us about the last one.
Extra gubbins. These are, by the way, just peak strategy names.
Yeah.
All the way down the line. 1 CP when your opponent's in your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit is selected as targets. It works on a walker or Grot's vehicle unit, except for Titanic vehicles. Selected as one or more of the targets of that attack. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack is allocated to a model unit, subtract 1 from the damage.
1 CP -1 damage, mate. Is this just one of the best stratagem packages we've seen?
It's nuts. Every single one of these is extremely good. Every single one of these is ones you want to use, and every single one of these is 1 CP. That is so good.
Downside is arguably the four damage increasing or damage reducing ones are all battle tactics, which, as we said, is only a downside for orcs. So there is, should this become, the best army in the game somehow, some way, people just stacking double vect could be a problem, could be a serious way of combating this.
Sure.
And of these 6, which is the best?
Oh, geez, man, you're asking me to make a Sophie's choice here.
I know. So good.
I think it's got to be the shooting one with the extra wound +1 of wound and damage.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most powerful strat on the surface. I think probably the most useful one for the army, given how it's going to play on the board, is probably the advance and shoot, or the one. I think that one's going to be the one that people are going to find you're using the most to be able to get effect inside your army.
I argue that bigger shells for biggest gits when you're targeting a monster or vehicle is the single 1 CP damage increasing strat in the game. I don't think there's any other 1 CP that gives you +1 damage, +1 to wound, or even close. So that's it for me. All right, that is our Dread Mob review and breakdown. Overall, mate, how do you rate this package, and how do you think this translates into an army on the field? Do you think it holds up or is good enough, or is it always going to be a little bit awkward because of the units you're just inherently going to want to take?
I think it's really good. I think that the raw power of these strats and the army rule is offset a little bit by the awkwardness of how you use walkers and stuff like that on the battlefield right now. So I think it's going to be one of the better ones, but I don't think it's going to be the best one just because of that. I know whenever I've tried to put killicans or vehicles like that on the battlefield, they take up so much space. They cause these giant traffic jams, and it just becomes kind of awkward to use it. So that's the only reason why I'm a little hesitant to kind of just book this in as like one of the best armies ever made.
Yeah,
because it's very good otherwise. But so I think that's actually an interesting balance here. So we'll see how the army takes shape. If people can leverage these, for example, you mentioned the Ludas is an interesting way to leverage these things outside of the context of walkers. So if they can find other ways of doing that and just have some of the walkers add some strength to the army, then without it being the whole focus of the army, then that could be really, really, really good.
Just take a stomper. Just send it. Just take a stomper. 1 CP -1 damage. 1 CP rerolls to hit. 1 CP +1 to wound and damage. I mean, you're gonna take like 12 mortal wounds from Hazardous a turn because of how many shots you have and how many guns you have. But it would be a hilarious time. Yeah, indeed. All right, let's hit a transition. We're going to head over to the Bully Boys, and has been slated and stated wide that this is now possibly the premier S-tier detachment in the game. And tell us about this detachment rule, mate. What do you get for the Bully Boys?
Well, the boss is watching you. So at the start of any battle round in which you have not called a WOG, if you have 1 or more war bosses on the battlefield or embarked on a transport, which is an important little tidbit there.
Distinction, yeah.
Yeah, you can call a WOG for a second time this battle. When doing so, it only works on war boss, knobs, or mega knob units in your army. But given how the rest of this list is going to pan out, that's not going to be much of a limitation.
Well, throwing it out there, I remember a line from the one of the OG podcasts, Best in Faction, and I think Colin on that show said, "I love it when the rule tells me the units I need to take," and this is exactly what I say. If you're taking this is everything you're going to want to slam in here. This is just uber powerful, isn't it?
Oh, it's so good. It offsets just immediately some thoughts on, or you get the dynamism of having multiple advance and charge turns, which puts you into a class with things like Gladius, which has always been a struggle there in terms of being able to slip people in advance and charge. But also, and importantly, one of the weaknesses of the WOG is that you have to declare it in your beginning of the battle round, right? And so that sometimes if you're only second means you have to telegraph you call your shot, and your opponent can play around that. And oftentimes it's okay to play around it for one turn. Your opponent can kind of back up a little bit, respect it some, and then you can mitigate it, and be quite challenging. If you're going to do it twice, if your opponent's respecting you twice with the ability to hit you, you're just going to win the game because they're not scoring any points, right? Well, so you just get a play. That's awesome.
Dead set. Like when I'm going first into orcs and they call a war, they usually get a 15 that turn, because I back up and I stay outside, average or even above average charge range. And so they end up usually translating that into a 15. It hasn't been a huge bother for me because I've been expecting it and playing for it, et cetera, et cetera. Doing that for almost half the game, 2 turns out of 5, that's if they get 215, game's kind of cooked, man. Game is like actually kind of in trouble already. Even if they weren't bringing some of the best current data sheets in the game as far as durability goes. But the first of the enhancements is teleporter. Warboss and mega armor only. Models in the bearers unit have deep strike, which is one of the. I kind of wish they didn't have it, because then not having like good rapid ingress options was one that would have been one of the holes in this list. But instead, they're like, no weaknesses. This is fantastic, isn't it? This is auto include.
Oh, it's 100%. This is enhancement you're always going to be taking. Anytime you have mega knobs, then spoilers, you're going to be having mega knobs.
It will, as of the back of this book. Sorry, I'm having to scroll down to the back of this book every time because for some reason it won't let me open 2 of them. It will run you 25 points. I would pay almost 40 for it.
So it's so good. So good.
All right, tell us about the next one.
The Big Gob, infantry warboss model only. At the start of the fight phase, select an enemy unit within engage range of the bearer. You take a battle shock with -1 to the results. I think this one's really good. I think that a lot of times something that orcs run into trouble with is against other combat armies, because your army really wants to hit their army with your whole army all at once. You create these interesting dynamics where fight first or interrupts can make combat sequencing challenging. If you can battle shock a unit so they can't interrupt, that's pretty good.
Or if they have fight first, you battle shock them so they can't precision the war bosses and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It's huge. It's so big, man. And this will run you. Oh, why won't you let me do that? Never mind. I'm actually just going to do them all at the end because I don't want to scroll down again. The biggest boss, infantry warboss model only, add 2 to the bearer's wound characteristic. And that is still very good, but I think possibly it's the worst one.
It's wild that we have say, add 2 to your wounds is bad. But it's not bad, but it's not. It's definitely the weaker one. It's kind of vanilla. It's still very good though, just objectively. But the other ones are just awesome. Yeah. So it's hard to compare.
Big Gob runs you 20, and the biggest boss runs you 15, and this last one runs you 10. Tell me about it.
The Ed Stomper. So infantry warboss. Each time the bearer makes an attack that targets a unit that's below starting strength, you get a reroll once. If it's below half strength, you get a reroll all the wounds.
So good.
Yeah, it's just awesome. Especially because I think some of the strats we'll get into allow you to do some mortals on the charge and stuff like that.
Yes.
That lets you kind of trigger this and kind of engineer it like that. So it's awesome.
I mean, and all the innumerable shooters, combi shooters, big shooters, all the nonsense little guns are not good for removing models, but they are good for taking you below starting strength. So, not about. I doubt a lot of the time you're going to be rerolling the wound roll, but as far as I can tell, outside twin linked weapons, there aren't a lot of sources of reroll to wound in orcs.
Yeah, that's generally been something which orcs have struggled with, and why I tend to value things like twin linked and stuff when weapons offer it.
Absolutely. All right, first of the stratagems, the arm to the teeth. It is a battle tactic, costs 1 CP. It happens when you're shooting or the fight phase. 1 knobs or mega knobs unit from your army that is selected to shoot a fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack roll, reroll a hit roll of 1. If a war is active, you can reroll the hit roll as in its entirety. Just all rerolls to hit. Stupendous. One of the make this army go facets. Yeah, that because Of course, it's actually you can make orcs hit on 2s. Most of them hit on 3s base, and then there are some of the weapons that hit on 4s. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of the knob attacks hit on 4s naturally, and if you put a war boss in there, it goes up to 3. But you throw a -1 to hit on there, and suddenly you're hitting
Yeah,
only half your
yeah.
attacks.
Yep.
This kicks it up to 75% of your attacks. I mean, that's a huge buff for one
Be a
CP.
huge buff. Next one.
Too arrogant to die. Your
So
opponent's
good.
shooting phase or fight phase determine units selected as targets for 1 CP. Your knobs or mega knobs unit from your army that was selected as a target of one or more of those attacks gets to fight on death. That fight on death happens on a 5+, or if it's during one of your wogs, and I'm so happy I got to say one of your wogs, then you get +2 to that roll, letting you fight on death on a 3+. For
Not
one
bad. We have seen so many versions of the fight on death in this edition. We've seen 2 CP auto fight on death, 1 CP, 4+. This is a 1 CP for all the turns that are going to matter. 3+ fight on death for 1 CP. I think it's very good.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's so generally you tend to see it as one of those two kind of archetypes, right? As you said, it's the 2 CP automatic, but then you got to bank a lot of CP and plan for it.
Yeah.
1 CP and you get to do it half the time. This one getting one CP doing it 2/3 of the time is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Always looking for a fight is up next at 1 CP. It is in the fight phase just after an enemy unit is destroyed. It is a 6-inch consolidate. It can move up to D3+3 instead of 3. If the wire is active, it is 6 inches instead. This can be pretty big. I see this as being, it'll come up once every couple of games. But when it does, you'll be really happy, either because it'll let you, try point something, wrap something, or reach out and just touch a bunch of stuff that you'll have to shut down because they will have to fall back from you or risk being the deaded. What do you feel about this one?
I think it's extremely good. So one of the things about the wog turn usually is you're going to hit a bunch of their front line, maybe a couple things that are in their kind of midline or whatever their counterattack thing. But then largely it's about they're going to hit you back, and how hard do they hit you back, and do you have enough stuff after that to then finish the job off or put out pressure to keep them down. With a 6-inch consolidate, you got to kill their front line and then do basically a normal move, and effectively it's 7 inches, right? Because you have to get within 1 inch of the enemy. So a 6-inch consolidate move. And then be within 1 inch of the enemy to hit their second line and tie up a bunch of their guns.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really good.
I'm really happy this doesn't say Boyz on it.
None of these
unit.
None of these strats say war boss, which is huge. If it said Boyz, that'd be very good. Just a couple of units of 20 Boyz with two turns of 5 up invulnerable save. And one of the big things about this is a lot of the time when we see other consolidate or pile in ones, they say that you have to tap other units, like you have to consolidate into other units. This one doesn't have that. This doesn't have that term and condition, so you can really use this to steal objectives because you don't have to go towards the closest enemy unit. If you are equidistant, you could just go take an objective. Yep, 100%. Yeah.
All right, crushing impact is 1 CP. It's in your charge phase. Just after a non-Mega unit from your army ends a charge. Select one enemy unit with engagement range of that unit, then roll 1d6 for each model in that unit that is within engagement range of that enemy unit. For every 5+, they suffer a mortal wound up to 6. If the wire is active for a unit, that enemy unit suffers mortal wounds on a 4 instead of a 5. And of course, you're never going to use this unless it's a wire turn or unless they've got like 2 wounds left. But so this is a weird one. So on Mega Knobs, they come in units of 6 and you'll have an attached unit. So on a wire turn, you're averaging 3 or 4 mortals, but the knob units, which can be 11s because you have 10 knobs plus a war boss, this is extremely good, and it's a 50-50 coin flip 5 or 6 on average dice. I think this is an extremely powerful strat.
Yeah, I think so too. I think what you're saying is basically like if you go in with a Mega Knob unit, you're effectively throwing a grenade in the charge phase, which is awesome.
Yeah. And
then if you're on knobs, you're throwing a huge grenade. I think that's awesome. I think that's really powerful. Again, we kind of mentioned some of the synergies that we saw with the enhancements. I think this is a very good strat.
And what's really good about it is, like we said, the shooting isn't really great for even clearing screens. Like 10 guardsmen, even you're shooting, may not clear out them in order to get to the gooey stuff behind. But the fact is, you can shoot a couple dead, charge, smash them to bits, and then even if they're too far back that you couldn't make a charge past them, you smash 1 CP down and consolidate 6 inches straight into them as well. So you do have a lot of ways to negotiate around the roadblock, which I think is cute. All right, next up.
Cut him down, 1 CP. It happens in your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit is selected to fall back. One of your Mega Knob or Knob units is the target that's within engagement range of that unit,
And then when that enemy unit makes a fallback move, all models in that enemy unit must take a desperate escape test. And if your WOG is active, you get -1 to each of those tests.
So you couple that with always looking for a fight and go and tap a bunch of their models and then make them die when they try and have to fall back. It's sick.
Yep. Yeah, it's really good. So I mean, desperate escape in general is really powerful. It's why you like to surround your opponent's units. You just make them pay a cost for falling back. A lot of times people don't want to do that. If you double the chances that something's going to die, it's just incredibly powerful, and you don't even have to surround them. So yeah, very good.
And if you couple it with them being actually just battle shocked as well because they failed the battle shock test, they just extra dead.
It's definitely rough. I mean, I think it just creates these scenarios where sometimes you have these really tough, like if you tap a tank and then you decide they have to fall back and they have to fall back to shoot your mega knobs, you have a 1/3 chance to just kill a tank for free for one.
For free. Yeah, so spicy.
Yeah.
That is a battle tactic for cut them down, and the next one is as well, which is hulking brutes for 1 CP. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. It's armor of contempt. It's armor of freaking contempt. 1 CP shooting or fight phase. Reduce incoming armor penetration characteristic by 1. And thank you so much, G-Dub, for putting this in the Mega Knob, Mega Armor detachment. We just love it so much.
Yeah. At least they made it only shooting phase, so that's small.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Did I say shooting in 5 phase? My bad. It's just a shooting phase.
Yeah. So, but at least small versus now you can still kill the guys armed with power claws in close combat if you want to. But the shooting phase, it's a little bit harder to kill them. I mean, it's awesome. You put Mega Knobs. I was playing Mega Knobs in the next detachment before the book came out because they were just annoying enough to kill when they had the 2-up saves and cover. You stick AOC on them and then their new datasheet roll, and it's just incredibly powerful. They're really hard to put to shift.
Incredibly good, and especially now when they have, of course, 4-up feeling their pain for 2 turns of the game as well. They're just you just don't bother. I mean, maybe shoot at them to get them to use this CP, and then just do other things with your time. And that's the best you can hope for.
Yeah.
I mean, what's their save versus multi-melters if they're in cover? Taking a 4-up?
If they're in cover, it would be -2, so it'd be a 4-up save.
4-up. In a wide turn, they've got a 4-up, 4-up. Sorry, 4-up, 5-up, 4-up. Because it's a wide turn, so you got involved. Revolting. What do you make of this 6-pack, and what do you make of the entire Bully Boys package, mate?
So the strats are all very good. They're synergistic. They're solid. They're not at the same power level as the Dread Mob, but I think if they were, this would be arguably one of the best things ever printed.
Correct.
So I think this is good. I think this is a good power level for the strats. They're all useful. They're all good, and none of them are in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Just like overpowering, right? Importantly, they're all 1 CP again. That's really great, especially for an army that really wants to do combat tricks and 2 CP heroics and interrupts and stuff like that. So that makes those kind of decisions much easier. The detachment overall is awesome. I mean, the detachment rule is extremely good. The enhancements, there are several good ones. And as we just talked about the strats, I mean, it does what orcs want to do really well. I've always been a big proponent of, my orc list is 2,000 points divided by power claw, and this is that. So
agreed. Well, when I first looked at this, I was like, okay, as far as I can tell, knobs were the best unit of the orc index. And if you just looked at this as taking, 30 knobs and buffing them with 6 ways from Sunday, you're like, this is a very good detachment. And then when I was breaking down and looking at what Mega Knobs now have, what Gaz can do, what War Bosses can do, I was just like, yeah, this thing's absolutely effed. 6 absolutely gas. All right, my man, let's go into some data sheets. Now, I had Ben Jurek and Lucas Troller on last week, and I had them pick out their 3 favorite data sheets. I didn't tell them which one because they're on separate segments. I don't know if you listened to it. I assume you didn't. But what is your first favorite data sheet in this book?
I think as far as glow up, it's got to be Gaz.
Oh, yeah, boy. Tell me a story.
Yeah, so Gaz was already fantastic, right? Because the lethal hits aura is extremely good in general. I couple that with the fact that the next detachment has a way of getting critical hits on 5s. That was really, really strong. But one of the problems that Gaz had was, he'd run into these horde units with his 6-7 attacks on the WOG,
at 4 damage each, and you would just beat the crap out of like 5 random,
Nothing's
random
scouts.
nothings, and then 5 other guys would just duck and weave around them. So the volume of attacks just wasn't quite there. They've given Gaz a sweep attack, and it is a very good sweep attack.
Mm-hmm.
So he has 12 attacks with a sweep now, doubling the number of attacks he would have had otherwise. At strength 8, AP 2, 2 damage. So these are good sweep attacks. That's awesome. That solves a huge issue that he faced. And then couple that with they gave him in the WOG turn, your unit that you're leading gets crit hits on 5s.
Yes.
So now suddenly you're getting lethal hits on 5s in his unit in the WOG turn, and that's just awesome.
With a 1 CP, I mean, in Bully Boys, 1 CP, 4 rolls to hit.
4 rolls, yeah, exactly.
Oh, disgusting. D-double-E disgusting. He is a fantastic package. I think he's stupendous. And the fact that, like, just cutely, if he joins a unit of Mega Knobs, Makari gets a 4 on their pain. So that's funny as hell. What's your next favorite?
So I'm going to skip the obvious one of the Mega Knobs because I think that they're...
it's been done. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, they've been talked about and they've been done. I actually think the Big Mech is really interesting.
The standard Big Mech or the SAG Big Mech or
the new model Big Mech, the one that just came out,
which looks fantastic.
Oh, he's such a cool model. His like output is fine. He's got some decent guns, I guess, and he's got some fine melee. It's all right, but his leader abilities are actually really interesting. So he gets to reroll advances made for his unit, which is already great because that's something which you often have to, be sequencing your WOG turn appropriately to have the CP to reroll a terrible advance on one where you need to be decent. Having the ability to just reroll it for free with this guy is awesome. Mm-hmm. But then most importantly, I think, is when you make a normal advance or fallback move, whenever that's finished, you get to just move horizontally through models and terrain as if it's not there.
Yep.
That's huge, right? Because a lot of times one of the best ways of playing against orcs is to screen them with move blocking, right? And you kind of jam guys right in front of you, and you go, all right, I'm going to sacrifice my little buddies here, but that's going to stop the orcs from getting around me because it takes too much movement to get around. This Big Mech just says, nah, dog, I'm running right through you. Let's just go straight through, and we're just going to be able to hit you. And I think that opens up some really interesting lines, which is really important, especially considering the loss of Badrook.
Well, I was about to say, I wish, I prayed this guy could join Freebooters, and unfortunately he cannot. He's Boyz, looters, mech guns, and knobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, one thing that's actually kind of cool about them too is one of the downsides of mech guns is the fact that they only move 3 inches, and so they're actually hard to get interesting angles from a position of safety. If you put a Big Mech in there, then suddenly your vehicles, your 3-inch moving vehicles with the mech guns can go through a wall from high shoot.
Yes,
which is so cool.
I love it. That's actually a trick I figured out the other day because I was only really considering mechs as something that comes in from reserve now, but then I realized, if you kind of have to place them perfectly because they've got huge bases and 3 inches doesn't, get them through every wall in the game. But you can do some real sneaky nonsense that people do not see coming, bro. Like, lol, my mech guns go through the wall. I love it. All right, one more, mate.
So I think it would probably have to be just the humble boy, actually. The Boyz have always been pretty cool. But their datasheet rule was kind of terrible before. I don't even remember what their datasheet rule was. There was something about like being able to reroll battle shocks or it was rules so bad that I've used them before and I've never once come up in a game where the rule mattered. But now they just make objectives sticky, which is awesome. That is a really, really good ability, one that orcs have not had. And orcs are an army that wants to push their front lines out as far as they can, which means that being able to make your home objective or your expansion objective sticky while you continue to push and pressure the opponent, super powerful. It's really good. World Eaters do it all the time, and now orcs have the ability to do it too. And that's awesome.
I agree. All right, let me talk about Zogrod for a moment. This is Mr. Wordsnagger, the scraggly head named Runtherd. He is toughness 5 up save, 5 wounds, no invuln to speak of, and a nice t-shirt save of 5+. He has a 1-shot weapon at strength 4 -1/1. Who gives a hell about that? But he also has in combat 5 attacks, hitting on 2s at 7/2/2. which is pretty respectable to hide in a unit of 20 Gretchen, which I guess is the idea. Feeling they're paying 6+ as well. But while he's leading a unit, models in that unit have Scout 9. Models in that unit +1 to hit and +1 to wound. That includes himself with his 5 strength 7 -2 2 damage attacks. And each time an attack targets this unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll. So even going in and trying to precision this guy out with toughness 5, he's -1 to wound, which can actually get quite awkward. And then when you call a war until the start of the next battle round, add 6 to the move characteristic of models in this unit, so they will move 12. I actually really like this unit. I like this unit a lot, especially in the Dread Mob, because the idea of what you don't want to do in the Dread Mob is have your opponent go first and just gum up all the lanes. So you pretty much just can't leave your deployment zone with your big base, killer cans and whatever else you got, Morkanauts, Gorkanauts. But this guy in this unit of 20 Gretchen, scouting 9 turn 1 and just making sure you hold real estate. And then if people move within range of you, you just bug out with the reactive move and then do some mortal wounds to them. It's freaking hilarious to me. And exactly how I think Gretchen should function on the tabletop. I think is such a good value unit for a pittance.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to mention that, you think about the reactive move as a way of protecting a unit is one thing, but using it as a way of pushing forward as well. You Scout 9, move 6, advance them, then they come. The first unit comes out to try and get them in board position, and you immediately react and move and jam your guys up 6 inches and blind even more.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love it. I think it is so good, man. I actually really do rate them. What's the Gretchen? So the Gretchen rule. So each time an attack targets a unit, if it contains one or more Gretchen models, until that attack is resolved, the right-hand model unit has a toughness characteristic of 2, of course. So yeah. So that means the -1 to wound.
Yeah, this was something which I don't know if this was fixed in the commentary or it was fixed somewhere else, but this wording they had was a problem before because the way it worked was you would be able to use the toughness of Zodgrod of T5 to be the unit that you evaluate the -1 to wound against. I think they fixed it in the rules commentary, but I can't remember. But they definitely had fixed it before the index when I had this kind of wording. I just don't remember how they fixed it, so I don't know if it's still in effect or if it's something they have to fix again. But when they were toughness, when evaluating units, toughness 5 with -1 to wound, that's pretty good. Toughness 2 with -1 to wound is just, it's still good because you're still kicking out a third of the wounds that people do to you, or hits people do to you. But it's a little bit of a different evaluation there.
How do you feel about the casino cannon that is the looters?
I think it's really cool. I think it's nice that they actually have a use case. I don't know, man. I feel like there's just better things I'd rather do. But also, the thing I like about it is that it leverages the army rules in a way that doesn't rely on vehicles, which is, I think, really important for this list to be viable. So in that sense, I think it's awesome, and I want to explore it some more. But as far as it as a raw power kind of, it's going to smash everybody. It's a bit too much of a swing for me, but I think it's really cool as a thing to try. And having a unit of it, I think it's really strong. Just maybe I wouldn't count on it doing what I need to do at any given moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. All right, one more pick, one more data slate, then I'll do one more and we'll get out of here.
Snickrot, the sneaky boy.
Yes.
He's largely unchanged. He's basically the same stats as far as I'm aware. He always had a really good precision twin link to combat attack. He always had an ability to pick himself up and redeploy him, which is awesome. Him and his unit. But now Snickrot himself has Lone Op, which is huge. Orcs don't get Lone Op. Orcs don't get good things, and we got Lone Op, and that is massive for this kind of an army. Especially for a guy that wants to redeploy too. He gets to do a bunch of secondaries or actions. He gets to stand in the open and screen things without having to use things like Grots to do that. It's just awesome. It's really cool.
I also see him as a once per game 10-point swing, because once per game, he's going to go take an objective off your opponent. He's going to use his once per battle, move in phase, pick him up, put him down, and just go and try and, yeet a 9-inch rerollable and just go flip an objective. And I think it's really sick, really sick. Big fan of the old Snickers. I think he could be in every single list, legitimately. There is no detachment that makes him any better or any worse, and he's universally good.
Yeah, agreed.
One last one for me. Let's talk about the cans. How do you? And of course, we have full knowledge now that GW was never going to let the best unit in this book be Grot tanks. So, and especially it's a unit that is out of production. I did not know they were going to do this, by the way. So people who listened to my part 2 last week, where I said I would not expect Grot tanks to be the best unit in the game, the best unit in this book for very long. I expect GW to be like, no, we will not let the 3D printers go burr and make a bunch of money for other people because of a unit that we don't no longer support. And they legended Grot tanks. For better or for worse, you guys have your own opinions, and I'll let you guys make up your own mind. But the killer cans I already thought were as good because they actually have genuine melee threats. They're actually quite good in combat, and you can be buffed in a myriad of different ways. And I rated them very highly. What do you think of them, mate?
I love killigans. I think they have been very close to being good enough for a very long time. The main reason why I think they haven't is the fact that you want to take them in big fat units, and that gives up almost all the bring it down in the world, which is kind of a problem, right? So, but if you're playing an army where that's going to happen anyway,
exactly right,
you don't really care that much, right? So, so that's where they're pretty cool there. Their weapons are actually quite good. Some of their weapons got glow ups too. The Grot got better, which is awesome because that's the best name I think for weapon I've seen in a while. The ability it has, I'm a little colder on than it was before. I actually like the fact that it was able to ignore cover or trigger ignore cover. And this ability, if this ability was like on a 1, a bad thing happens, but this is a third of the time. So 1 to 2 times a game, or in my case, 3 to 4 times a game, you're going to roll D6 mortal wounds to yourself. That's that's a little painful, and especially when one of the other upsides, like the 5 to 6. So these 3 abilities for those our listeners. Sorry, I should have read that. Is on a 1 to 2, unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. So on a 3 to 4, you add 1 to the strength of weapons that are equipped on this unit, and a 5 to 6, you add 1 to the attacks of ranged weapons that are equipped by the unit. 1 to 2 obviously sucks. D6 mortal wounds is painful. 5 to 6 awesome. An extra attack on all your shots is really strong. The 3 to 4 is fine. +1 strength usually doesn't matter that much. Weapons aren't really at a too much. I mean, rocket launchers are strength 9, case one with strength 10, which is a bit of a break point. But the problem is the 1 to 2 is such a downside. If you roll a 3 to 4 and you got a different ability that was maybe a little stronger, I'd be more inclined towards it, because then it's like, okay, well, there's a risk, but all the upside is really good for this.
I agree. I like that you mentioned the Grot because I mean, I would not be surprised to see people taking 12, if not, sometimes 18 killer cans. And I reckon one unit of Grot may make the cut in those 18s, simply because of the freaking hilarity that will occur should you ever play like Endless Swarm Tyranids. And you can
also make your stuff damage too, right? Against
exactly, man. With +1 to wound against vehicles with D3 +3 shots each. It's actually pretty good with ignores cover. Like, it's actually good, man. Unbelievable. But just like somebody's 20 gargoyles, like trying to stomp up to these literal cans of Coke, and you just D3 +7 shots each. With it's so freaking crazy.
I love the little trash cans, man. They're some of my favorite. I've got a bunch. All specially converted. I want to put on the battlefield so bad, so I'm excited to do so.
Yeah. Then when they get to combat, they've got 3 attacks, hitting on 4s only, so they are a bit vulnerable to -1 to hit in combat, which aren't too are a little bit on the rare side, but when you run into them, it's going to suck. But they're strength 8 -2/3. Like, they're very good in combat. And then, of course, we know that you can push the button in the Dread mob. And the amount of buffs that this thing gets from the Dread mob, it just goes to the 9s on every front. Doesn't matter which thing you roll and or choose. They're all good. So, yeah, I'm quite a big fan of the Killer Can. All right, my lad. It's time to do our rating system, which we do at the end of every one of these reviews. Out of 10 as an Ork player, and speaking on behalf of possibly many Ork players out there, how happy are you with this codex?
Oh, I'm going to say a 9 out of 10, only because the WOG rule didn't change to command phase to command phase. That's the only argument I have. Thing I don't like about it. Otherwise, this thing's awesome.
I'm going to find my smallest violin. Stay right there, Brian. This is the best codex Orks have ever had. Do you believe that?
I think it's definitely extremely good. I mean, all the detachments, you can make an argument that you want to play, which is just for any army is awesome. The data sheets were already solid; they're already good. This is awesome. I think this is there's nothing but upside here. A lot of variety too. That's great.
All right. Orcs have been slated as many things. Most people consider them to be the only S tier army going into the new post data slate meta. Do you hold with that, or do you think they're elsewhere?
Oh, I definitely think they're one of the best lists or best armies that are out there right now. I think that people are going to find it a little harder to play it properly than they are giving it credit for, especially when people start to come up with some strategies against how to handle mega knobs. But I think that it's an extremely good army, and it even gets, and the better you get with it, the better the army becomes. 100%. I think there are other armies that are also extremely good, so I wouldn't put it as the only S tier, but I do rate it amongst those armies, though, for sure.
Fair. All right, my dude, we are going to check out and go over and record our beautiful part 2. Anyone, and once again, another chance, anyone you'd like to shout at, anything you'd like to mention before we check out of here?
Shout out to my boys at Ignite. Just the team I'm on. It's getting very quiet now. They're all approaching WTC, but I love those guys, and any chance you get to play against us, give us a shout, and we'll.
Beautiful. All right, mate. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us your beautiful brain of knowledge. You big old bully boy yourself. Thank you very much, and I much appreciate it, dude. So we'll see you over at part 2, guys. Thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you for listening to Art of War Down Under, a content review podcast for Warhammer 40K, hosted by Adam Camilleri, produced by Seamus Ronan. Enjoyed the show? Want your lists reviewed and the content you heard put into practice? Sign up to our Patreon and connect with us online or on Facebook. Just search for Art of War Down Under. Signing out from tomorrow.